Namaste. Namaste and welcome to this short practice for an uncomfortable back. So today we're going to focus on an uncomfortable low back. So perhaps if you've been doing a lot of standing or sitting or lifting and your back's feeling tired, so a grumble rather than an acute pain. If you have an acute pain in your back and it's requiring painkillers, and that's the time to talk to a medical professional. So a doctor, a physiotherapist, someone who can give you advice about your specific back issue. The back of the body is very complicated. Its relationship with the hips is also very complex. So understanding exactly what's going on with your back can be very helpful, and certainly that's information to give to your yoga teacher so that they can help you in the best way that they can. This particular sequence I have put together for a special student of mine who's coming for a one-to-one. So I know what's going on with their back. I don't know what's going on with yours. So take your own awareness into your practice. Work with your body, really listen to your body. If something that we do here isn't suitable, if it exacerbates any discomfort that you're in, rest out and seek the advice of an experienced yoga teacher as well. Very helpful. Okay, let's get started. So we're going to start lying down on the belly. And the reason for this is because that puts our back into its most natural alignment. So people think sometimes lying on your back is a good thing, but that flattens the curve at the low back. And we want to maintain a little of that curve as is natural. So as you come to lie with your forehead on the back of your hands or on the floor if you prefer, taking your feet just apart enough that the heels fall outside the hip width of your body, but the toes fall towards each other. And just so you understand how your back feels, draw your heels towards each other, focusing on how it feels in the backs of the legs, the buttocks and the low back, and then allow the heels to fall apart. You can do that a couple of times. So you can feel the tightening of the effort across the low back as the heels come towards each other, and the releasing of that effort as they fall apart. So when your back is tired, before you come to a point of real pain, it's a good idea to rest in this position for a few breaths, a few minutes even. And if you need to, you can gently wiggle your hips from side to side, which helps to massage not only the front of the pelvis, which is quite nice, but also to create a little bit of movement through the soft tissue in the back of the body as well. With the body in stillness, taking some deep breaths and really focusing on allowing the belly muscles to relax here. If it feels desperately uncomfortable here, try pressing your pelvis, the front of your pelvis, down in towards the mat a little bit, just enough to take that sense of discomfort away. If you need to press more firmly than this practice is probably not for you. If you can alleviate enough of that tension to relax your jaw and your face and your shoulders and your feet, then you can carry on with this class. So the first thing we're going to do is a press up. And it's not a press up in the normal sense. It's really a variation of cobra. And for this, we're going to bring the thighs towards each other. The feet don't have to touch, of course. We're just bringing the legs more into the center. We're going to press the pubic bone down and take the hands wider than your mat, anywhere around about shoulder or chest height. Take your forehead to the floor. Firm the tops of the feet into the mat and feel that engage the backs of the legs and the buttocks. Try lifting your belly muscles a little bit as well, engaging them. And as you breathe in, press into the hands to lift the head and the shoulders up just a little. And as you breathe out, release down. Keeping the elbows bent all of the time, breathing in and up, and breathing out and down. Breathing in and up, breathing out and down. And just taking a rest. Pillow out of the hands, head on the hands, toes towards each other, heels falling apart, widening the legs. A little relax of the belly muscles and the buttocks, shaking the hips from side to side if you want to. Or if you prefer a little stability here, just pressing the pubic bone down towards the mat and taking some deep breaths. So if this practice felt okay, it's all right to do another round or two of those. So you do around about 5 to 15. And we're going to do a different variation as well. So if sciatica is your issue, then try sliding your right knee out to the side. So hands in the same position, forehead on the floor, firming the left foot towards the floor. A little effort in the buttocks here, maybe not too much. And then pressing up and releasing down. Inhaling up and exhaling down. Inhaling up and exhaling down. And then just gently resting, legs back into the resting position, toes towards each other, heels apart, head on the back of the hands. Couple of deep breaths, just feeling the difference between the two sides of the body. And when you're ready, sliding your left knee to the left, forehead to the floor, arms wide, firming the right foot into the floor, inhaling up and exhaling down. Head quite neutral here, inhaling up and exhaling down. Inhaling up and exhaling down. And then sliding your left leg back to the center, toes towards each other, heels apart, head on the back of the hands for a little shake of the tail. So I'm going to call that the recovery position cobra pose. And that is a really good one to do for sciatica. It works for lots of people, but you'll know immediately or fairly immediately if it works for you. So if it doesn't feel good, you don't have to do it. And if it feels great, then do a little bit more of that. Fantastic stuff. Now from here, we're going to come up onto hands and knees. So taking the hands underneath the shoulders, tucking the toes, pressing into the hands and coming up onto your knees. We're going to take the knees wide to begin with, and the hands also a little wider than the body. And making circles with the hips. So imagine you have a pencil from your belly button to the floor and you're drawing a big circle with that pencil. And in the opposite direction as well. You can keep the head quite neutral, but allow your neck to move if it wants to. You don't need to hold it rigid. And then in the center, we're going to bring our knees more to the center, so about hip width apart. The hands can stay wide if you'd like to, particularly if you have tightness in your shoulders. So we're doing a gentle cat-cow, but we're going to focus more on the opening of the chest rather than the rounding. So as you inhale, lift your head and look forward. Allow your shoulder blades to slide down the back. Maybe lift your tailbone a little, but not too much. Firm your belly muscles. And as you exhale, come back to neutral and then maybe taking the chin to the chest a little, just tucking the tailbone under a little, but not rounding massive amounts. Inhaling forward and exhaling through neutral, maybe a gentle tuck under. Inhaling forward, press into the toes, draw the shoulder blades back, open the chest. Exhaling, rounding just a touch. Inhaling and exhaling. From here, we're going to tuck the toes under, press into the toes, lift the hips high, and come into downward facing dog. Now here, soft knees is what we're all about, a little softness in the elbows even, and then just extending through one heel and then the other. It is true that tightness in your gluteus muscles, your buttock muscles, your hamstrings, and your low back muscles can contribute to back pain or back discomfort. However, it is more likely that those muscles are too long or too lax or too lazy rather than too tight. So here in the center, we're going to bring our knees to be bent and just gently wiggle the hips from side to side, just a little wiggle. And what downward dog helps us to do is keep the back into a really nice alignment, but at the same time, give us an opportunity for some movement and mobility. Bringing the knees down to the mat. Now, I want to share with you a little secret about child's pose. So before you do this, watch what happens to my back. I've got my knees together and my child's pose here makes my back very rounded. But if I take my knees apart and keep my toes together and stretch my arms forward, my back is much straighter. So that's what we're aiming for. We're aiming to not round through the back too much. So let's try this child's pose with the knees quite far apart. The toes don't have to be stuck together, but just in the direction of each other. You can even keep your fingertips tented to the floor if you want to more hover or suspend yourself between your hips and your wrists. But you can try all the way down to the mat if you want to, or you can try a little something underneath the head, like a block or a cushion or a book. And just taking a couple of deep breaths. If child's pose doesn't suit you at all, that's okay. Your alternative will be kneeling. And again, if you need something to lift your hips, like a cushion or a block, that's all right too. But kneeling is a much better position for the body than sitting in terms of what it does in the spine. It's harder to slump when you're kneeling than it is when you're sitting. Fantastic stuff. So from child's pose coming up into kneeling, if you're still in child's pose, and we're going to come up onto our knees and step forward with the right foot. Try not to topple over like I did. And I find that when I'm working in lunges, it's better to have the back toes tucked under for me because it gives me power from the back foot. But if you prefer to have your toe tucked flat, that's okay. Work with your body. If you need something underneath your knee for a little bit of cushion, a little bit of softness there, you can. And then here in the lunge position, we're going to take our hands towards the floor. If that feels not so good on your back and you'd rather have a little support, you can bring your hands up by using a couple of tin cans or yoga blocks. And then we're going to make circling motions with the hips. So as you do that, you might find that you also roll around the front foot. That's okay. But we're focusing on moving the hips around in a circle. And we're going to go in both directions. So here we're warming up the connections in the hips, which will help to lubricate any areas that need a little bit more fluidity. But also it helps to begin to lengthen the hamstrings. And we're just going to float ourselves a little bit backwards and forwards. So having done the circles, we're just going to go backwards and forwards. And you might want to take your toes up, or you might prefer to take your toes down, whatever feels good. A little bit of both is usually quite good. And then in the center, we're going to make sure we haven't got too big of a distance between the right foot and the left knee. Press the feet apart and use that strength to come up to standing or an upright lunge. And then here, we can gently move in and out of a lunge as well. So we want to focus on engaging these buttock muscles to support. And we also want an engagement in the belly muscles, but we're just moving in and out of this lunge. And if it feels good, you can do a little bit more. And if it doesn't feel so good, you don't have to. But in the center, if you'd like to do some more, you can raise the arms up. And exhale as you draw the shoulders down. If you want to, you can open your chest, firmly press into your feet, make sure you're engaging your buttocks. And then exhaling, we're going to drop the right hand down to the right leg. Then we're going to inhale the left arm over to the left, little twist to the left, and exhale that arm back down to the side. Inhaling up and over, exhaling down to the side, still firm in the buttocks. Inhaling left arm up and over, exhaling down to the side. Excellent stuff. So from here, we're going to come back to hands and knees. Take both hands to the floor, and we'll do a little circling of the hips like we did before, which you can do with your toes tucked flat if you've had your toes tucked under. Very good. And then we can do the same thing to the other side. So bringing the knees more towards each other, you can either come from kneeling or from hands and knees to step the left foot forward. And with the arms on the floor to begin with, doing our hip circles. So hip circles again here. And it might be that you circle around the sole of the left foot as you do those hip circles. We're massaging the thigh bones, the femurs into the hip joint. We can go the opposite way as well. There's no test at the end of this. You don't need to know any bones or muscles to benefit from the practice. Very good. And then a little bit backwards and forwards. So it might be that we're beginning to develop that conversation in our bodies with our hamstrings here. So it might be that you keep your toes up, or it might be that you keep your left toes down, whichever you prefer. And you don't have to do much, and you don't have to straighten your legs either. When you're ready, just checking that your left foot isn't too far forward of your right, pressing the feet apart and coming into an upright lunge. And here we can also go in and out of the lunge. Now there's lots of people who give the alignment cue not to take your knee further forward than your toes on your front foot when it's bent. But it's okay to gently come in and out of that. If it doesn't bother your knee, you're not going to do it any harm. We're hardly loaded at all here. Okay, and then in the center, raising the arms up, reaching them up, and then drawing the shoulders down. And if you want to, you can gently open the chest, really firm in the belly here, buttocks rather, and in the belly. And then back in the center, dropping your left hand down. We're going to reach the right arm over to the left side, and then coming back to center and releasing down. So we inhale up, exhale over, strong in the legs, strong in the buttocks. Inhale, inhale up and over, and exhale down is what I mean. We'll do one more like that. Inhale up and over, and exhale down. Excellent stuff. And then from here, coming back into hands and knees. And this time, we're going to take a downward dog pose. So just extending through the heels a little paddling of the dog. You don't have to hold your dog for very long. If you want to, you can look underneath the armpits, one and then the other. And then releasing the knees down to the mat. Making sure that your knees this time are a little bit underneath your butt. I tend to work with my knees a little bit behind me, but underneath the hips is good. And if you need a little space for your wrists, if they don't like being right underneath your shoulders, just have them a little bit in front. That's all good. So here, we're just developing a tiny bit of stability and strength. So press the mat away from you, engage your belly muscles, look down but not dropping the head. Slide your right leg back, trying not to move the hips if you can, and slide your left hand forwards. Now it might be that this is enough, as particularly if your back is sore. I wouldn't recommend doing this while the back is in pain, but if you're developing a little bit of strength then, and your back just feels a touch uncomfortable, then it might be okay to do this. If you want to do a little bit more, you can lift your arm and your leg. We don't need to lift very high, just firming and stabilizing with the muscles of the core and releasing down, and the knee and the hand back underneath the body. Take a little wiggle in the center if you need to. And then firming the belly again, sliding back the left leg, sliding forward with the right hand. This might be enough. If you want to do something a little bit more than this, lift just the arm. But if you feel that you can do everything, lifting your leg as well, firm in the belly, firm in the buttocks, breathing, of course. And when you're ready, sliding the leg and the hand underneath the body. Wonderful stuff. From here, we're going to lie down onto our backs. So how you get down onto your back is up to you. I wouldn't recommend the standard way of sort of rolling down today. You can slide yourself to the floor though, which is quite a nice way to go. And when you come down, you can have your knees bent and your feet on the floor and the arms out to the side. So we have done some backward and forward bending and a little bit of side bending too. We haven't done much in the way of twisting. And the reason for that is that sometimes that is a movement that the spine can easily do, but it is not always very stable. So we are able to go much further in a twist usually than we can in a side bend or a forward or backward bend. So when you're twisting just now, we're going to try to do just a little, not everything we can. So with the knees up here, we're going to sway the knees a little from side to side. The feet are really wide, and that allows the two sides of the pelvis to operate far more independently, which is preferable most of the time. So just gentle sway from side to side. And then in the center, we'll bring the heels, if you can get your heels all the way back to your buttocks and reach your feet, that's a little bit too close. So just heels towards the buttocks, but not all the way. You can have your feet still quite wide. We're going to take our elbows and bend them so that the upper arms press to the floor, the palms of the hands look at each other across the body. And then pressing down with the back of the shoulders, the arms, the heels of the feet, just gently lifting the hips up and releasing down. So we want to activate the buttock muscles and a little bit in the belly muscles as well. Pressing down with the back of the body to lift and releasing down. And interestingly enough, it's also better to press down with the back of the head just gently as you firmly press the backs of the shoulders and the feet into the floor. A few of these. You can do these with your breath as well if you like. You can inhale up and exhale down. If you feel this in your hamstrings, and particularly if you get cramp in your hamstrings, generally means that the hamstrings are doing too much and the buttocks aren't doing enough, and the upper back as well. So coming up one more time into our bridge pose here, and we're going to circle the hips like you were doing a hula hoop. And again, if this doesn't feel good, then you don't have to do this. But this is something I find really good for releasing tension from the back. Let's go the opposite way as well. And it's a really nice way to gently encourage the buttocks to work to support the low back as well. And then gently releasing the hips to the floor, releasing the arms out to the side, taking the feet just slightly further away from you and swaying the knees a little from side to side. So not much, just a little. And then for our next practice, we need a little block, which I've completely forgotten to bring with me. So I should just go and grab one. But fortunately, it's the yoga studio and there's always one handy. So if you don't have a block like this, then a book, a sturdy book would be suitable. And coming back down onto your back, into the same position that we have with our feet on the floor. You're going to press into the heels, firm the buttocks, lift the hips enough to slide your book or block or support underneath the sacrum, and then release the hips straight back down to it. So the sacrum are the fused bones, the fused vertebra that join the two hip bones to each other. So your support is underneath that very firm part of the back, at the back of the pelvis, and not up into these soft spaces that are just above the hips, and not too low into the buttocks, although you'll obviously support the top of the buttocks. And this is our posture, our supported bridge pose. So relaxing the arms out to the side, relaxing the back of the head. You can even gently sway your nose from side to side to release any tension from your neck. You can take your feet a little bit further away from the buttocks, as long as it feels supportive. And on days when you don't have really strong discomfort, you might even lengthen the legs all the way straight. That might not suit you on days when you do feel discomfort, but if you don't, then maybe it does. And the alternative to that is to just extend one leg at a time, leaving the other side of the pelvis supported by the bent knee and the foot on the floor. So taking a few deep breaths, either on each side or with both legs extended. And trying to relax the effort from your face, your tongue, your jaw. Trying to relax now the effort of the abdomen and the buttocks as well. And feel a little openness here at the front of the pelvis. If you enjoy back bending and your body really likes doing it, you might explore a slightly higher support. So sliding your feet in one at a time, only if you want to, a little firmness in the buttocks, lifting the hips and turning a block, if it's a block, up to its middle height. And if you're using some sturdy books, adding another book. And again, resting down, first exploring how this feels with the feet just a little bit further away from the buttocks, but the knees bent. And that might be enough. For most people, extending the legs here won't be helpful if your back feels already unstable. But if you feel that today is not that day and you can explore, you can extend your legs a little bit longer. Allow your feet to be really wide with the toes falling out towards the side, just like they fell inwards when we were lying on our tummies. Now they fall outwards. And if that feels good, you can rest here for a couple of deep breaths. If it doesn't feel good, just sliding one leg in at a time, seeing if it feels okay to have just one leg supporting. And if that does, then you can try the other side as well. Just for a few breaths to each side. Otherwise, you can bring your feet both back in for support. Whichever variation you like, spend a few deep breaths. And when you're ready, if you've been on a high setting, then just coming down to that initial setting for a few breaths. And then when you're ready, as subtly as you can, lifting the hips to release your support, placing it to one side. And here, it might feel better to keep the knees bent, in which case you can take the feet wide and lean the knees together. That suits some people. Or if you feel comfortable, you can extend your legs. And in Shavasana, take another 5 or 10 breaths. If you have time, give yourself longer here, 7 to 10 minutes. I hope you enjoyed this practice for the low back. There are so many things that we can do that can help. The best thing that we can do is to use our awareness to move gently in the body so that our movements are strengthening, supporting, healing, rejuvenating, nurturing, and avoiding using our ego to push, to strive, to achieve. There's no need for that in yoga. Wishing you a happy and healthy day. Namaste.